Welcome to the Black Box of Media, brought to you by Ultimate Edge Communications. I'm your host, Aleisha McCall, and this is episode 8. This podcast lifts the lid on the hidden strategies behind high-performance media advertising. If you've ever wondered why some campaigns absolutely crush it and others fall flat, this is where we break it all down. In each episode, I sit down with marketers, CMOs, and business owners to uncover the hidden strategies that drive the best results. In this episode today, I'm very excited. We're joined by Sarah Myers, the powerhouse behind the marketing engine at REA Group, Australia's most visited real estate platform. At REA Group, Sarah is the General Manager of Audience and Marketing, leading a talented team across brand and performance, lifestyle marketing, audience, and personalisation. Sarah is also the Deputy Chair on the IAB Australia Board and has been recognised as 2025 CMOs of the Year as number 8. This woman is a rock star. I'm absolutely delighted to have her on the podcast today. Also to mention, on the realestate.com.au platform, we're talking about 12 million Australians using the app every month. So this marketing team is navigating some of the most complex challenges in personalisation and creative execution and in AI innovation. So this is going to be a front row seat to really break down how this all works, how this comes together with one of Australia's leading brands. So let's get into it. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Aleisha.
It is fantastic. I've been excited about this one. We've got a lot to unpack in terms of, what's happening in marketing and media advertising, the challenges that you are facing every single day. I think our listeners are going to get a ton of value out of this one. So with so much to cover, I'm going to jump straight into the questions because we have got a lot to get through. I know we sort of have packed this down from, 20 questions down to sort of like the top 5 to 10. What we're going to do now is I think we're going to dive straight into what's on everybody's minds in and around creative execution and what you actually need to do now to get the most out of the platform and to get the most leverage out of your creative advertising budget. So Sarah, when it comes to this whole platform first creative, what does that really mean in practice, and how do you and your team plan for it and think differently about it to be able to execute the mass campaigns that you are producing on a consistent basis?
Yeah, it's unbelievable the pace of change that we're experiencing. I think back, earlier in my time at REA, and you could often just create a film-based asset, resize it a couple of different ways, 16 by 9, 9 by 16, and that was sufficient. And I think what we're finding is every year, the pace of change and the expectation of creative production is just escalating. So for us, what it means is really truly understanding what is best practice across each platform. It wasn't that long ago that you just needed to get your brand in the first 5 seconds. Then it was 3 seconds. And today it's 2 seconds. So to keep up with what is changing and what best practice looks like, we work really closely with a lot of partners, whether that's working directly with TikTok or working directly with YouTube. We stay in tune with each of the partners to make sure that we know what they think is best practice. As we're going into campaign production, and we've just recently launched our new campaign, we have quite a mega matrix of all the different pieces, different messages by market, different messages by product, and then different creative needs for each piece. So there's a lot that comes together. But I think the most crucial piece is preparation before you're going into a campaign. So you might have an idea. Bring your partners in early, work with your media agency, work with your partners, media partners directly, share the idea with them and get some learnings and builds. What we're finding is whether it's YouTube or TikTok, we're creating different assets and pieces, and we're not just working out what have we got in the can post a 3-day shoot, because that just doesn't cut it anymore. And so it's about going into each session to maximize the production, because the volume of outputs that are needed today are so much more significant. So you have to set yourself up for success. So,
and Sarah, can you talk to us just on that before we move on, just of how important it is to really nail in on those platform first approaches? Because I think a lot of brands are going in and going, right, we've got to get this campaign idea right. We've got to have this beautiful creative strategy. But when it gets down to the actual execution process of like, oh, right, now we need to mash this up or cut this down, it's very much an afterthought. And then you see that on the platform. So can you just talk to us about how you and your team have been able to really tackle that? And I've seen some of this amazing creative that is literally launching. And I just think marketers will really benefit from your insight on this.
I think the attention economy is just reinforcing how hard it is.
Mhm.
And what we are doing is looking, for example, our YouTube spots are ensuring, yes, brand is up early, but they're actually a faster pace. They move faster than we would put on broadcast, and we move the placement of different moments and key beats to have something potentially a bit more engaging up front rather than that build that you might have across a broadcast-led piece. TikTok is making sure it's as authentic to platform as we possibly can. So while we're on set, we've got a completely different team that's focused purely on using the same cast and locations that we've got in our broadcast-led pieces to showcase features and create that real first platform pieces.
Beautiful. And how are you creating efficiency through the funnel? Because as we know, creative is one of the biggest costs when you're setting up. You've got your media advertising campaign. Now you've got to produce all of this creative. How are you creating efficiency? How are you, not so much reducing, but leveraging the investment that you are making in each of these creative placements to get as many variations as you can to support all of the media advertising that you need to do?
Yeah, you're at the mercy of the algorithms. And so you learn pretty quickly whether that creative is cutting it or not. And I think we go into it making sure that we've got 5 different ideas for each cast member and we capture everything. And then we will have certain pieces for launch and we'll test various pieces. But then we're making sure that we keep evolving that based off the learnings once the campaign is live. Set and forget just doesn't cut it anymore. You need to keep optimizing your creative, and whether that's through different ways that you're extending it with AI or just messaging or moving the pieces around to see where those key beats were. We do a lot of creative testing too once something is live, and you can see when those emotions kick in and making sure that is balanced across the spot, but that varies for platform.
And how do you in that process? I know a lot of the time we all want to test more than what we actually are. So we're going, but now the platforms are demanding it, right? They're saying, look, if you don't, it's no longer about the followers. It's no longer about how good you are. You're only as good as your last campaign because you're being measured by the algorithms. It's like the algorithm is like the gatekeeper to say, if you're good enough, we will let you speak to your audience. But if you're not, you're going to fall by the wayside. So when you go into that practicality of your in campaign, you're doing all of this creative testing, how are you really driving the teams behind that to make sure that you've got enough of those new learnings come through? And then second to that, when do you go, right, we found the winner, let's now, kind of pump and capitalize everything behind that?
I think it's important to have a bit of a test and learn culture within the team so that if something doesn't take off like you thought it was going to, that's not necessarily a fail. It's, okay, share that, create those learnings and make sure we're going from there. But we're testing so many things at one time. In fact, in our last campaign, we had this renter creative where we had a tradie kind of going along on a milk cart as he's inspecting properties. And it had such incredible engagement that it was chewing up a fair chunk of budget. And so we kind of had to optimize and bring it into a separate campaign. So I think it's about seeing what's taking off. We've got so much real-time data at our fingertips. Something will work on one platform and then share that, work out whether it should exist on other platforms. Can you share those learnings in other environments? But I think it's a matter of just constantly looking at the data, seeing what it's telling you, and then applying it in the best possible way.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And I think one of the key takeaways there, which I love, is just how important it is on each of these campaign creatives, these campaign shoots that you do to go for that variety, the variability, knowing that you're just not sure, obviously campaign theme, campaign concept, campaign idea, mission critical, but to release yourself from the expectation of this one's got to work. It's like, right, I'm going to serve 5 or 6 up now.
Yeah.
I'm going to let the algorithm, let the platform tell me. I think that's a really key takeaway that we all just need to maybe let it go a little bit and go, right, let's get these out. Let's get these variations out. And to your point, by planning that in advance and really being, what I really love about everything that you've been sharing with me is that purpose-driven approach to say, we are going to make sure that we go into these shoots, we go into this creative planning with maximum variety. Platform first, yes, but variants for each one so that you're beginning with the end in mind, and I've had the privilege of seeing firsthand what that output is in terms of the variety and the variability that you can now put into the platforms to really leverage the new world that we're in of that algorithmic judgment. The algorithm is now somehow the algorithm is now somehow judging your brand. Like, when did that become a thing, right? We all thought it was because of our brand value, and it's just going and it's
but
crazy.
You're right, you do have to relinquish a bit of that control. And so you sort of work out, Sometimes you know best and sometimes you don't. But managing expectations around that internally is a big piece. But I think a big piece throughout the whole creative ideation piece is not to have some big ta-da moment at the end. You need to make sure that as soon as you've got that creative idea, bring your media partners in as early as you possibly can. Pressure test the ideas. You'll find a few different builds that they've got from perhaps other campaigns or just things that are worth experimenting with. Make sure you've captured as much as you possibly can in those shoots. We are creating several hundred assets from those days. We have photographers on set. We have several teams running at the same time. And you have to just make the most of that budget investment because you need to leverage that for a good 12 months. And we know how short those attention spans are.
Totally. There you have it. 3 days, hundreds of assets, people. That is the goal, to get to squeeze, literally, because the budgets aren't getting bigger, right? Like they're staying stagnant, in some case reducing. We have to be able to squeeze and get that leverage out of that, for example, that 3-day shoot. And on top of that, as we all know, all of the investment that goes into making that happen. Now, I'm going to go a slightly different angle here with you now, Sarah, but building on this whole creative piece, because in some of the recent discussions I've been having or events with, whether it be Adobe, looking at the Adobe Recent Marketing Summit and what, Salesforce and so on are doing, it's really been around, enabling brands, like yourself to be able to go, right, we've got all of these creative assets. We are spending hundreds of thousands, some case millions of dollars on our creative assets every single year. How can we now centralize this, bring that all into, a data asset management platform? And then how can we start to now leverage some of the AI capabilities that are coming so that it keeps the core brand essence at play of who we are, what we do, and how we communicate, but also is now putting those variations on steroids, so to speak, because now you can get even more variants to test. Can you give us a little bit of an idea of, where you are on that journey, what you're thinking about as, a general manager of marketing, and what it means for you and what you think is going to be possible, if not already, in that space?
Yeah, we're absolutely experimenting with this. And I think it's about creating permission to experiment. And sometimes you'll play with something and it doesn't quite feel right for the brand, but other times it's so seamless that you wouldn't have even picked up that something's been enhanced. And so we're working with many different components of that, whether it's product imagery, pulling things in. You have to be leveraging these platforms to get the scale that's required.
And when
but I
you're
think a big
looking
part
at
of that is just the tussle of control again.
Totally. And when you're looking at some of those things, I'd love to get, as a keen eye for detail, when you're looking at some of those variants, are you impressed by what you can see? Are you thinking, okay, no, I can totally tell? Where's your head at in terms of what you're seeing of some of these variants to go, oh gosh, I wouldn't even know that had been enhanced by AI and so on?
Oh, it's so hard to pick. And then every now and then you'll just see a little bit too much of one color or something where it's lent too far into the brand that you're like, nah, I can tell on that one.
Absolutely. We had an experience recently where we had a dog with 5 legs and we didn't no one picked it up until the final point. So I'm hearing you on that, but I really wanted to get your insight. Okay, so now that's a great segue into sort of this whole marketing stack and data foundation. So my question for you, and it's quite impressive, you guys laid the groundwork years ago with Telium and Braze, about 6 years ago from memory. And this was really around laying the foundations of your marketing technology stack, what you were going to do with your first party data, how you were going to segment. What I'm really keen to understand is what's some of the biggest payoffs that you are seeing now as a result. And the reason this is so important is because I'm having a lot of conversations with CMOs and marketers at the moment to be like, look, we want to implement all of these things, but we've got this MarTech stack that's kind of hanging together, being band-aid in different places. Systems don't talk to each other. We've got data in the wrong place. It's all very fragmented. What I'd love to hear from your perspective, having now starting to see some of those payoffs, what's really working for you?
Yeah, I think there's no right time to kick off a project like this. Often you'll find that a lot of the team that advocate for a project like this aren't necessarily there down the line to see the full benefits of it. The data will never be clean enough to maximize what your ambitions are in this space. And you often won't have the right people in the business at the start to get there. But you just have to dive in. So I think, 6-ish years ago, we were working from just sending out personalized emails to knowing the fact that we needed to be reaching and engaging audiences across so many platforms to leverage our own audience. And I think, you can't underestimate, yes, media and off-platform is so important, but what you don't want to do is having to keep reacquiring the same audience over and over and over again. And so we knew that we had incredible data at our fingertips, but that we needed to find the right platforms to kind of come together to fulfill our ambitions in this space. It was not easy. And, we were one of the first brands in Australia to actually pair Braze and Tilium together. And it has worked incredibly well for us. I think we saw, as we've implemented this, yes, data had to be invested in. A couple of key pieces for us was really making sure that marketing, product, and technology all bought into this program of work. You can't do this in isolation as a marketer. You also need to bring marketing talent into the business. I think if you can't understand or converse all in the same language, we need marketing technologists to really help do that for us. But yeah, tenfold increase in conversion. We now have over 30 million property views every month just through our owned channels. Now, if we had to acquire that through our cheapest channels off the platform, we're talking between $10 and $15 million a year extra we would need to be spending on marketing to just get those property listing views, which is what our customers are ultimately looking for.
But I love that you've quantified that. Like you guys, and that's the thing, is that you're so focused on the fact that, okay, we only really want to acquire once without being extreme. It's like acquire once we've acquired, how do we keep them in the platform? How do we create those personalized experience to really cut through and create enough value to warrant the privilege of them staying within your environment, right?
And that's it. We always talk a lot about the fair value exchange. So you become a member or you agree, and receive communications for us. What we do is look at what is that next best action that you need to take. That property journey is so long and complex and full of
Painful.
emotion. And so, our brand and audience strategy is really focused on understanding what is that next best action that will support you on that journey, and kind of comes back to our brand platform of keep moving. There'll be times where you're going and stopping and going and you find the one and then you miss out on the one and then you go again. And it's about us supporting you with various different communications on the channels that matter most to you to go, okay, perhaps that's about finding out what your current property is worth. Or maybe you need to understand what your borrowing power is, or the price has changed on this listing. Have a look at it, have another look at it. So no matter where you're at in that journey, we match that with all the data that we've got at our fingertips.
And what have been maybe like one or two things from your perspective that you've gone, oh, that's really cool that we can do that? Like with all of these foundations now, and we know nothing's perfect. Every brand has its challenges regardless of how organized it is. But when you look at sort of the base and the foundation that you've been able to build, what are some things that you even sort of go, oh, that's really cool that we can do that now that we've got those foundations in place?
I think Real Estimate is one that we're all particularly proud of. Yep. So we've got a lot of incredible data at our fingertips in terms of what properties have sold for, and we know the demand of different properties. And so now, as a property owner, if you follow what your property, you put your address in as an owner, every single month you'll receive an updated communication on your preferred channel that says what your property is worth and how many people are looking for a property that matches that configuration in that month in that suburb. So
it's pretty cool.
And we have over 4.5 million Australians that have, follow what their property is worth, and at least 1 in 4 will come back every single month on those communications to do that. So if we were acquiring that audience off platform, again, we're talking pretty significant money.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that fair value exchange is there. Consumers want that information, and so that's where they will engage.
And that's what I love, is that the focus on how can we create the absolute best value, the absolute best experience, to then be given the privilege to have them, communicate with them, have them engage with us, and have them stay in our community and evolve in their community. I think that constant recognition of or acknowledgement of how can we deliver more value, how can we show up, we create this incredible experience so that they do want to come back and they do want to engage, with your brand. Okay, so next question on this is sort of around, we know that lots of marketers are struggling with messy data, things just not being in the right place. And to your point, there's these conversations going on between the marketing teams and the marketing technology teams, or just the technology teams, and it's a constant challenge. So what do you believe are the must-haves to have? Like I said, what's just the bare minimum that you've just got to have in order to make sure that you can start to do some of these communications and personalized experiences?
Yeah, I think shared goals and OKRs is crucial. No one individual or team can be responsible for just the cleanliness and the usability of data in the business. I think so many people need to be able to come together and have that shared goal and ownership. I think what's also really important is to start simple. You're not going to necessarily have that multi-channel, multi-dynamic journey as the very first one that you get through on a platform.
Mm-hmm.
Start simple and get a few runs on the board, and the momentum really fast follows. And that's so important from a team standpoint too, making sure that you don't kind of bite off this huge piece and it takes too long to kind of come together. We're breaking it down piece by piece, getting it one channel working really well, then add 2 channels in, get a full multi-channel journey going along the way. But the data is where it all starts. And so just don't over-engineer it. Just start as simple as you possibly can at the beginning. And make sure that there is enough value that you've got in kind of your first-party data. I think that can never be underestimated.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, and sometimes it can be seen as the boring bit, especially for marketers. I think in terms of really making sure that structure, that segmentation, that setup, that tagging, like the tagging of data, and just, I mean, for you guys, billions of points of data,
Yes.
right? Like it's when you think about, okay, well, if we go back to that begin with the end in mind, it's like without that all being tagged correctly, segmented correctly, you are then, you're out in market doing what you want to do, and you don't want to be handbraked by that. So I think that's some really great advice, just to start small, get some quick wins on the board, gain the team momentum, and then keep building from there. It's like that flywheel effect, right? It then really starts to pump in.
You need to just keep reusability as a principle in mind. Don't just try and think about that data set for that one use case. If you set the data set up well enough, you'll be able to really unlock so much so quickly. And then the segmentation side of things, what makes the most sense to segment your audience by? Demographics aren't necessarily going to be the one. For us, it's all around what buying stage you're at, and what you're ultimately looking for. Renters versus potentially people looking to sell. We've got over 60 different audience segments, and we're always kind of topping that up with more AI and ML smarts. So I think it's about going beyond demographics, and you'll find some true nuggets of gold in that data.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Okay, on that note, that was a brilliant segue. Thank you for that, Sarah. We're going to head into some AI and automation. So really what I wanted, and I've been very excited about chatting with you on this, is talking about AI agents. Now, I know you're doing quite a bit of work. You've been experimenting with Omnia, I believe, and some AI platforms. So what I would love to hear from you is, what are you using them for right now? What are you experimenting with? What's working? What's impressed you? Where are you at on that journey?
So a lot of the team have created different agents for different things to support them. And I guess we ultimately see AI agents as freelancers within the team. So just trying to work out where it is that you're wanting to either fill some gaps or accelerate something. So whether that is, in our lifecycle campaigns, experimenting with how do you make the idea bigger? How do you make the idea bolder? What aren't you thinking about in that idea, or other considerations? So sometimes it's kind of black hatting an idea, or other times it's about really accelerating and making it bigger and bolder, and how to get more of an impact from it. Copywriting's a big one. A lot of the early copywriting, whether that's for performance-based marketing or taking a whole new landing page and getting that kind of developed, and then we put the human touch across it all. But getting the pace of work at the moment and the scale of brands that we work across, it's really accelerating getting things going, and kind of operating as assistants and freelancers across the broader team.
Absolutely. I know you shared something with me recently just around obviously having, like what you said, so much data available at your fingertips, looking at, okay, what's working, what's not, and then having and sometimes as humans we can have a little bit of cognitive bias. So having an agent pop in to go, okay, look, assess this group of data, tell me what are the top 3 things that I can improve upon that we could adjust to get an even better result from this campaign, and having that external perspective. Even though an AI agent, it feels like a bit crazy that we're even having this conversation, but having that different perspective to go, look, here are the 3 things that maybe you haven't seen that you need to focus on. Just the sheer acceleration of those optimizations and the variety of new thinking that would be coming in just by really looking in at the data from a different perspective. So I think that is pretty powerful.
And it's so often the 1%ers that really actually shift the dial so much further. So that's feeling like a really good playground across the team right at the moment.
Fantastic. Oh, well, I'm excited to see how that evolves for you guys. Now, I know you've rolled out some internal AI training, and you're experimenting with Omnia. I think what was really powerful and what I'd love you to speak to is just sort of the process that REA has gone through to start to set this up, and really what has been the key to making sure everybody feels safe. Like, okay, we can use AI, we can use these platforms, we can put our information, we can put our data into them, and really around sort of that safe adoption. Because I think the first part is really everybody on the team feeling safe, feeling empowered. But I'd love you to share with the audience sort of the steps that you've gone through as a business and what you've done to be in a position where you're AI ready to actually start to do some of this implementation that we're talking about.
So yeah, as you touched on, we've got an internal platform that's Omnia, and there's plenty of different models that all live under that, various different Gemini models, ChatGPT. And so depending on ultimately what you're looking for, Omnia will flag who's best for what, and so therefore you can build your own agents out in that platform. But Omnia is where we are allowed to upload and experiment. It's a safe, contained environment. And I think that is often the biggest challenge. We have many things that we don't want to share more broadly. And it's very important from a business standpoint that is contained in a very safe environment. And so what we've done is make sure that everyone across the business has access to that. We're constantly updating the different models and the different ways in which we can scale that further across the business. And we recently ran leaders training. And so the idea was that if you were kind of leading teams, you could be fully versed in that, hands-on session of what are the different models and what are they all best for, and how do you then get your team building agents and leveraging the capability that we ultimately have invested in across the business. And I think that was a great step, rather than just going one to all, having one to leaders, then allowed those leaders to create bespoke versions of training and grant permission to their teams with really tangible, practical examples of brand team. It's going to be copywriting. Have a play with this. Here's what I'm doing. You have a go. The life cycle team. Let's black hat some campaign ideas and get a bit further out. And making sure that it was permission granted from your kind of team leader. And we've seen great success in the adoption through that funnel, rather than just kind of a one size fits all town hall style update.
I just love the thinking behind it. Again, it's very intent driven, very purpose driven. How can we make this work in our organization? This is new. We do need to acknowledge how everybody's feeling about it, the apprehension of it.
Everyone's at different levels. There's plenty that are investing as much spare time as they possibly can in becoming as expert as they possibly can.
Yeah.
And there's others that are still and constantly feeling like they're slipping further and further behind because it isn't top of their priority list on a weekend to just immerse themselves in. And so it is this dance of making sure that we are rising the tide for everyone, and making sure that as we're finding great examples and different people are doing, unlocking new and exciting things, that we're sharing that. And so we've got plenty of different Slack channels where we're all sharing different pieces that we've seen people do or we're doing ourselves.
Which is, I think that is the key, because I know, and you and I are having this discussion of just how much it's like we're all learning something for the first time. So we're all learning how to ride a bike again for the first time, and we're all starting out. And some of us are just, jumped on, and for whatever reason, we've just taken off and we're all good. And others still have our parents holding the seat at the back to be like, can I let go now? Or some of us just don't even want to get on the bike in the first place. So, there's this just the on the continuum, it's so extreme between, your early adopters and then your laggards. And I think that over the next 12 months, it's going to be just really interesting to see how that sort of all falls into place. But I do, and I'm glad you shared it, because I do love the approach, the adoption, keeping it safe, building the environment. I think they're all just, in terms of the checklist of being AI ready, they are all just really key factors. And I think our audience is going to get a lot of value out of that. So now I want to move into sort of segmentation, smarter signals, that kind of thing. Now, this blows my mind, but with billions of data, not millions, billions of data points in the REA ecosystem, what are the signals that really matter to you when it comes to segmentation?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, behavioral signals and then declared signals. And we ultimately pair both of those together. So as I kind of touched on, some of those behavioral signals might indicate how engaged you are with a property. How many times have you looked at it? Have you saved that property? Have you inquired on that property? And then other pieces might be that you've indicated that you're wanting to understand what your borrowing power is and that you need help in financing. And so there's many things that we balance to try and ultimately pull together to create these multi-channel journeys for the audience.
and like finding that it's, giving it to consumers before they know they're ready for it. It's like they've given you these 5 different signals and know, okay, therefore now they're at the point where they do really need to understand their borrowing power, for an example, giving the consumer the relief of not having to constantly hunt for things, and you just showing up in the right moment, oh, surprise, you're here with the right information that I need at this point. I don't think we can ever underestimate the value of that. And some of the examples that I've been seeing in the e-commerce space, but also just the basic consumer journey space of the way this new advanced technology is now allowing our brands to show up in real time, while I'm looking for the mascara on a Friday night, and you can kind of tell me the differences between these 5 options so I can make a decision in my home on e-commerce environment. That to me is mind-blowing. And so bringing that in full circle, leveraging those, data points and so on, the more that can be done. And of course, for your brand, you can do that at just such a large scale. I think what I'm really excited about is the experiences that brands are going to be able to create as a result of that. And now as a result of the technology enabling them to have that one-to-one conversation, incredibly personalized experience while I'm shopping for mascara on a Friday night, as an example, right? So I should be out on a Friday night. I've got 3 kids under 8, so I'm shopping.
I think the scale that we have really does give us clarity on what we're seeing people go through in their journeys and what's mattering and resonating most with them as they're going through that. So therefore, you can kind of preempt for someone who's, that one chapter back. Here's where majority of people that then did as their next best piece. So let's try and help them navigate that next piece. And so I think that those cohorts of audiences that we're seeing all come together, we've got enough data points that are indicating, well, this is the path that, this cohort took. Right, let's try and help this consumer go through a similar path.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. I love it. Okay, now, second question for you in this space is many marketers are, we've discussed this, but now this is the contrary of just drowning in data. So how do you, and for you guys, it's probably not an exaggeration because you've got so much of it. So how do you extract insights that drive real action? How do you focus on the 20% items that are going to drive 80% of the result with so much data available at your fingertips? Like the rabbit holes that you guys could go down on a daily basis must be extraordinary. So can you share with us how you get how the team stay focused on what actually matters?
Yeah, we've got brilliant in-house capability in terms of our insights and analytics team, and they work closely with product and marketing. And yes, there's so much data, but I think the storytelling is a piece that's often forgotten. It's not just a matter of looking at data on one point of time. It's like, how's that trended over time? Has that changed? Are there external market factors that have changed that? Is it a new product feature that's changed that? And so it's about having, I think, great capability in-house that can move the data around, manipulate it, but really make sure that we're surfacing those truly valuable insights. And then, of course, data visualization really helps tell that story. We've got lots of great dashboards with data visualization. And then, AI summaries too, just to kind of make sure that we're all navigating it in the same way. But I think don't underestimate the importance of having great talent that can articulate the data storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is another great segue because I have been hearing some pretty incredible things that you guys have been doing in this space around how you're acquiring talent, your relationship with RMIT, which I would love you to elaborate on. And I guess you've built this really powerful model with RMIT. What was the spark for that, and how is that helping both sides? Because what you've managed to build there and now leverage is pretty incredible. So if you could just give us just a bit of a background on what you've done and where that's come from so the audience can understand and appreciate the sheer volume of that, and then just how that's had a really positive effect on talent, solving problems, all that kind of thing.
Sure. So about 3 or 4 years ago now, we were finding that we couldn't bring in enough talent for our lifecycle marketing team, and we had big ambitions in the space. And so we knew that actually we would have to think differently about how we approach this. And so we're really fortuitous in the sense that we've got both B2B and B2C within the business, being a dual-sided marketplace. So created the idea of a marketing graduate program that actually offered both. And the intention of the grad program was to offer grads both sides, but then ultimately to try and fill our lifecycle marketing funnel. Often marketers aren't necessarily across what lifecycle marketing is and how it brings, comms and technology and multi-channel pieces all together so beautifully. They're more familiar with kind of what brand is or what performance and social are or what go-to-market is. And so creating a program that had the breadth across all of that, it was really interesting to see how along the way, one of the standout rotations for the grads was life cycle. And that was the dream come true, really. And so we created this grad program. And then at the end of the rotations, the grads all are assigned a role in, one of the many areas that they've gone through. And they all just thought, oh, I wish we could kind of get our hands on this at uni. And so from there, we decided to partner with RMIT. And MarTech is just, we're never going to be able to fill the funnel unless it's started to be baked in at unis. And so RMIT is going to be one of the first university in APAC to actually have MarTech as a major. So as of next year, our team's going to be on campus sharing real examples, and we're blown away by how far uni has come. I'll definitely show my age when I understand that, we can basically have, VR headsets on platforms and holograms of the team there sharing their learnings when they're not there in person that are multilingual, and it is
Crazy.
incredible. But so we can share a lot of business and real case examples back to students and really help them understand and want to choose a career path that does lean into that beautiful blend of kind of marketing and technology. But actually, we're all learning at the same time too. We're quite excited about doing a bit of a back to uni day for a lot of the team later in the year, where we can really experience how students are learning today.
Absolutely. And how, when that sort of plays itself out, obviously you've got these students and these grads coming through and then they're coming into the business. And from what I understand, there's sort of like a evolution happening where the grads coming in are mentoring the new ones, and there's
That's
almost
right.
like a self-managing process, right? Of this constant evolution of talent coming into the business, fresh thinking, different perspectives. Can you share a little bit on that part?
Yeah. Another important piece was, I guess, as we're have many talent that we've brought in over the last 4 or 5 years is, they're very ambitious and very talented. And so the grad program also allowed them to either mentor grads or be buddies with grads or be people leaders of grads. And it created these multi-layer piece. And then as the grads kind of took their exec-based positions and we brought a new wave of grads in, we sort of just kept topping it up and sharing great learnings, but unlocking, that much desired people leader, mentor kind of buddy roles. And they're in demand and they move around every 6 months when we do another rotation through the program. But it really is important to make sure that you're not just investing in those grads, but actually those that are kind of at the campaign manager level as well, or brand manager level, and making sure that they're getting great opportunities to mentor and lead along the way too.
And just that early, to have that experience and that exposure that early in your career. So now if we just look at this, we've kind of built on creative, marketing technology, talent, really getting things to fly. If we now look at sort of this next phase of mass personalisation at scale, I think, all of us can say like we've seen or we've been a part of or we've produced something that seems like it's mass personalisation at scale. My question to you is, what does mass personalization look like in real estate marketing? Maybe what does it look like now? And then what do you see like big picture looking like, by 2030? I'd love you to paint us the picture, Sarah, on what that looks like for you.
Oh, look, there is, so much that happens at a suburb-based level. There is so much that happens to different people in all those 60 different audience segments that I touched on. And there's plenty that happens just down to your actual address as an owner. So that's what's happening today. But we are not resting on the fact that that is enough and the mission is not complete. And so we're talking around 2030 and what would it look like in this next wave? And we kind of talk about going from mass personalisation to hyper-personalisation. So what might be to more cohort-based is true one-to-one personalisation, and making sure that it is not just looking at what majority of people that went down this path did. It's actually what we believe is exactly what you need. And your partner who might also be looking for property would actually have different experiences in that one-to-one world, because there are different pieces of information that will be more critical to you than your partner along the way. That's the ambition, is really just that hyper-personalisation and one-to-one. There'll be some people that are really all in on a very immersive, visual-led experience is what property search should look like for them, and there's others that are far more into the detail and the contracts and, the pest and building reports, and really making sure that it's not just a B, C, D piece. It's about what is right for you. And, even today we're constantly launching new product features and testing and learning what it is that audiences are resonating with. So we've got everything from, vertical video tours that are fully immersive, feels like you're physically walking through that property experience, to just the AI highlights. You'll get a clue on whether that property is going to tick enough boxes for you, or whether it's not, and you're going to kind of move into the next one. And so depending on where you're at in that spectrum, or how you prefer to consume content, it's not just we'll take you to that property details page. We will take you to where we think is the right place for you.
Yeah, wow. I mean, it's so, what I love about this space is because, in Australia, property is on everybody's minds, right? We're thinking about it every single day. We're consuming it every single day. You guys can see that from the data. I'm just imagining this incredible e-commerce, a home buying experience where I can go through the whole thing digitally. I can talk to agents when I want about the property, understanding all of the details as I'm going through, pictures coming up, showing up for me. My local ads are all tailored around those homes that I'm looking at. It's just mind blowing in terms of, with such a passionate country of of people who are just, this is so important to them. I'm excited to see what that looks like, and not only the next couple of years, but certainly, I mean, to think about what it looks like in 5 years from now, 2030.
I know, it's wild, isn't it?
I think we're all going to be pretty mind blown about the way we buy, the way we engage and buy property now versus how that's going to look in 5 years from now. I think we're going to sit back. Maybe we'll have a similar conversation in 5 years and kind of regroup on, wow, okay, that ended up pretty amazing.
It's a big Australian business, and with, one in every second Australian adult that you walk past every month has been on the REA app. So big stats like that creates a challenge and an expectation that consumers will want us to keep improving, bettering, making it even easier than it ever has been before. And so, the challenge is on us to fulfill these wild ideas and make it as easy and as seamless as we possibly can to transact property.
Oh, absolutely. Like the pressure is real, right? It's a huge, and I know you and I were having this discussion about the responsibility of having 12 million Australians on your platform every month engaging with the brand. And I know that's not lost on any of you, what that means and what that, rising to the occasion looks like. But yeah, I'll just keep flying out some ideas, some futuristic ideas, and we'll see what happens. I love to get into that futuristic mindset and see what we can expect in 5 years from now.
I know, because, in order to keep driving growth, to go from, over the last
how do you
2
grow on
years,
12
we've kind
million?
of gone from 10 million, and we thought 10 million was just never going to be able to be exceeded. And, here we are now at 12. But in order to kind of keep growing, when consumers are across more platforms than they ever have been before, and you need more creative across more platforms than ever before, and it has to be platform first, and you've got the MarTech, and you've got the data, and then you're trying to overlay the AI smarts to make it all work harder and better before. But then you've got this product that needs to keep moving at pace too, that to meet and exceed those expectations. There's a lot in that marketing and product engine that has to keep evolving at pace.
Beautifully summarized. It is like that, those layers, we're talking like 19 layers now in the marketing technology stack. And that's without breaking out all the individual, platforms that need to connect into those, 9 to 10 key areas to actually make the engine work. So I think that that was beautifully summarized, because if I take that all, full circle and we keep it in the real estate frame, we've really got to make sure that if we're building a home and we're building a smart home, we've got to make sure that the slab is strong, the foundation is strong, because, next thing you know, walls are cracking and, tech's not talking to each other, or you want to put on Google Home and it doesn't work because those foundations have not been laid in the beginning. And if you can really, master the basics in that, and I'm not saying that they're necessarily basic, but master the foundations, and then to your point, like what you've shared with us today, just keep building each of these layers consistently, you will find those green shoots or, those moments where you go, wow, okay, that was actually something really cool. And now we can build our future success on what we've just done here. And I don't ever discount that how important just putting one foot in front of the other is every single day, moving towards those outcomes and those goals, because you need it, the team need it, the wins. The wins are so important. They can be, to your point, just the 1% wins,
Yeah.
but they can make such a dramatic difference in keeping everybody on the same, heading in the same direction towards the same goals. So thank you so much for sharing all of those nuggets. This wrap up today is going to be a big one. Now, last question for you. What advice would you give to marketers, CMOs, general managers of marketing, trying to lead with data segmentation, not just to follow the trend cycle? What would you say to them?
Look, you just have to dive in. There's no perfect time. And I think it's really important to choose progress over perfection.
Yeah, I love that.
You just got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
For us, I think we rethink the structure regularly to make sure we're setting ourselves up for success. We've created many center of excellences along the way, whether that's analytics, whether that's in our marketing automation space, or whether that's in life cycle. And so that we are not learning things over and over again. We're bringing the smarts together and then scaling that across the many brands that we support. And that has worked really well for us. But every, 12 or so months, we'll rethink what's the structure that we need to move forward and how do we best support that. It's not necessarily about what individuals in which roles. It's like, what do we need as the right foundation to fulfill these plans?
Yeah.
And then I think another really important piece is to build and lead a culture that's bold. That you are happy to experiment and get things right and push the boundaries and create those stretch goals, because otherwise it's all going to fall in the too hard basket and things will just keep moving further behind. But you have to be really ambitious if you really want to try and get this data and segmentation piece underway.
And Sarah, how do you keep, I know I promised that was the last question, but I can't help but ask this one. How do you keep yourself as a leader? You're leading a huge team at REA. How do you keep yourself, inspired, thinking bold, pushing the boundaries, showing up? How are you doing that? What are you doing to make sure that you can keep leading from the front like you clearly are, and just bringing the team on that journey to get them to where they need to be? Because I know you sort of set that vision. You're very clear on where you all need to get to, but what are the things that you're doing for yourself and for your team on a daily basis to make sure that happens? Because this isn't just by luck. This is,
No,
carefully
it's not.
designed.
It's not. I think it's about really making sure that you're empowering your leaders. They're experts in their space, and that you're there to ultimately support, advocate, and remove roadblocks. But make sure that you are listening to your team, what's working, what the frustrations are, and doing your best to help move things out of the way and get things going, whether that's deeper cross-functional collaboration that's needed. Work out how you can kind of help them fulfill the plans that ultimately layers up to the vision that you've got for the space. I think that's really important. I think vulnerability is really important. No one has everything perfect every single day. There are always things that aren't necessarily going according to plan. And I think as leaders, we're often perceived to be all composed and it's all perfect and it's all okay. But I think it's really important to share when you're at capacity and when you're not, and how you're navigating different things at different times with your team and leaders, and being, as empathetic and human as you possibly can be. But at the same time, then making sure that you're filling your cup with the things that really bring you joy, and diving into sharing lots of great pieces that you've recently learned, and not making sure that you're holding back when it comes to that.
Yeah. No, I think that's brilliant. I think we're all needing each other more than ever to get across this next phase, this future of marketing, so to speak. And I just think that some of those, again, gold nuggets that you've shared are just going to be so valuable for listeners. So thank you so much, Sarah. This was an absolute masterclass in my view in the future of marketing. I think we covered so much ground in a very short space of time, from, the creative optimization process, the creative production process. How do you begin with the end of the mind? How do you prepare in advance? How do you leverage now more of the technical AI-driven capabilities to do more with less. This is really that next era of how can I now take my great base and how can I leverage this technology, this AI coming through to be able to meet the demands of the platform, to meet the demands of the algorithmic aspects that we're now dealing with. The fact that it's no longer about followers anymore, and it's about, you could be a brand with 300,000 followers, and if you do one good piece of content, you go viral overnight. That, the Instagram and Facebook, it's 80 to 90% are going to non-followers. Like, it's just the pace of change, where things are moving. I think it's just been so valuable for our listeners to hear how you're addressing each of these elements. And then when you move into the marketing technology stack and you look at the segmentation, look at the data, getting the basics right, getting those foundations set up, and then the talent and the tech and the flywheel that underpins that, I think what you've done is you've just given us all a really clear picture of what that future can look like, what you guys are doing now to make that a reality, and then how things like AI agents can start to play a role within our businesses to help us do more with less. It's not about the replacement of humans, it's about the enhancement and the lifting of humans so that we can all focus on our highest and best use. And let's be honest, there is more than enough to be done.
There is more than ever to be done, and it's just about trying to work as smart as we possibly can.
100%. So I just want to say a huge thank you. I've just been so impressed by not only your abilities, but your ability to articulate all of this for us today, so we could really have this rich, deep discussion. And I know our listeners are going to get a ton of value out of it. So huge thank you to you, Sarah, for being so generous and so willing to share this info with us.
Thank you so much for having us. It's always great fun to talk about a lot of the great work that the team are doing, and really proud and pleased to share it all with you.
Amazing. That is unreal. So look, there you have it. If you've got value from this episode, hit subscribe to the Black Box of Media and leave a review. It helps more marketers like you unlock the hidden strategies behind high-performance media advertising and marketing. Let's keep the conversation going. If today's episode sparked new ideas or challenged the way you think about media, I'd love to hear from you. Drop me a message on LinkedIn and share your biggest takeaway. If you want more insider knowledge, remember you can listen and watch on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube for any future episodes packed with actionable strategies. So until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, keep testing, and most importantly, keep making media work hard for you. I'll see you in the next episode.